This podcast is brought to you by Firehouse Subs, the firefighter-founded hot sub chain with a passion for hearty and flavorful food, heartfelt service, and public safety. Ready for your next mission? Firehouse Subs is offering firefighters the opportunity to continue serving after service, now as restaurant owners. Learn more at firehousesubsfranchising.com.
Greetings and welcome to the Women in Fire radio show. Today we're going to be talking about mental health. May is Mental Health Month. Thank you to Fire Engineering for allowing Women in Fire to be a part of their radio show series. I'm Lisa Baker, the Southwest Region Trustee for Women in Fire. As I mentioned, today we'll be talking about mental health. Today I have with me Kat Dazener, who is a firefighter in Evans Fire District, Colorado. I have District Chief Kim Phillips from Houston, Texas Fire Department. Retired Lieutenant Heidi Simon from South Metro Fire. Kimberly Lightley, who is formerly with the U.S. Forest Service, and Northwest Trustee for Women in Fire, Megan Sayers. So as I mentioned, May is National Mental Health Awareness Month, an annual observance founded by the Mental Health America in 1949 to highlight the importance of mental well-being, educate the public, reduce stigma, and promote support to those affected by mental health conditions. Mental health is vital for our overall well-being, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. It encompasses emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Mental health is crucial through all the life stages, enabling us to cope with stress, work productivity, and contribute to the community. Mental health can fluctuate due to factors such as workload, personal relationships, or economical challenges. It's also closely connected to physical health, as conditions like depression can increase the risk for physical health problems. The more we talk about mental health, the more normalized the conversation will become. Recently, we've seen many athletes speak out on their mental health issues, such as Simone Biles, Michael Phelps, Kevin Love, and many others. So how do we encourage good mental health, and why is it important? Anyone?
Yeah, I'll start off. So I think encouraging mental health, I think we have made some strides, but we need to keep continuing to make more. But the first step is building a culture, not just in the fire service, but specifically in the fire service. The number one thing you have to do to get over that block is build a culture within your department. So that means having the conversations about mental health, getting your command staff on board, getting your firefighters on board, incorporating that to your fire academies, and just normalizing discussions about mental health issues, even as little as like, hey, what resources are out there, or, that people are going to therapy and seeking help. Once we get over that, build that culture, it really helps to get through the stigma that has been around in the fire service and really the whole country for years, that we just need to suck it up and deal with our problems. And, it's weakness if you're showing weakness if you talk about it. And I think we're doing a really good job moving on from that, but we just have to keep continuing to push it because it's a huge problem. 23.1% of Americans are dealing with some sort of mental health issue. So it's not a small thing. We see it. I'm sure everyone has experienced suicides, whether that be in your family or in your department. And really the only way for us to keep combating that is to create a new culture and keep talking about it, keep sharing stories, and keep making efforts to change that perspective on it.
You made a good point. You said 1% of population probably has mental health things. With COVID, we heard, I think that's when I remember hearing more and more about mental health, was during the COVID lockdowns and such, with the isolation, especially when people were working from home, they're isolated from other people. The schools were all distant learning and such. So do you think that that helped bring more awareness to mental health?
I think it definitely increased. It really amplified, I think, all the issues. A lot of people sitting in lockdown, sitting in their houses by themselves. Loneliness was such a big issue that it's now been classified as a carcinogen. Um, so that came after COVID, but all of these, we do so much, especially as firefighters. We just go and go and go and go. And a lot of times that's to hide from our demons. And it works really, really well until you have to stop and sit down. And I think COVID forced so many people to be on lockdown and to sit with their thoughts that they realized, hey, maybe I don't have this under control. Hey, maybe I'm really not doing okay. So I think it amplified the symptoms, but it helped to start generating a lot more conversations. A lot of people were communicating through Facebook or the internet, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever they were using. And sometimes it's a lot easier to hide behind a keyboard or words than it is face to face to tell someone, hey, I think I'm dealing with anxiety. Hey, I think I'm dealing with depression. Hey, I'm having suicidal thoughts. So I think in a way it did help.
I think you're right. I know recently at the last election that we had in California, there was a proposition on the ballot, Proposition 1, that was bonds for mental health treatment facilities. And it did pass by barely it passed. And it's ironic that this morning on the news they were talking about the facilities and such that they were going to be building because of Proposition 1. So I think that you're right. It brought a lot more light to the issues of mental health because of the loneliness and such. Anyone else want to contribute?
Lisa, I think that completely agree with you and Kat. I think the interesting part is that it brought it out in a lot of different industries. So it didn't make it just about the people that we are serving, the quote unquote general population, but it did start to identify some of these mental issues and mental stressors within the other medical fields and the truckers and all the different people that were dealing with things during COVID. So I think it really widened the picture on mental health in general. So I completely agree with you, and I think it makes it a little bit easier for us as firefighters to say, yeah, we're part of that population that could be affected.
Hey Lisa, and this is Megan. I think one
Huh.
of the other reasons why it's really important to focus on mental health isn't just like everybody deals with it. Unaddressed mental health issues can affect cognitive abilities or cognitive functions. So start thinking about decision making, ability to focus, your reaction times, problem solving, all things that people in our profession do on every call. We make decisions. We have to react quickly. We are solving problems. And if we have issues that are unaddressed or untreated, that can impair our ability to do our jobs well. That can impact the public we serve. That can impact our fellow coworkers on the scene. All that. So those are, I guess, less heartstring ways of why mental health is important. Is that it impacts our performance, and our jobs depend on our ability to perform.
So in the fire service, I think that many relate mental health to PTSD. Yet not only in the fire service, but any profession, bad leadership can have an effect on one's mental health. Do you agree or disagree with this? I mean, I think right now, I'm not going to go there.
I'll start off. I happen to have a lot of expertise in this area, so probably haven't driven some of my own subordinates crazy. I absolutely concur, and I think we 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 pin a lot on people to go back and find that one incident, right? We all have them. That one thing that was just like, oh my gosh, and it's in some degrees and levels, it's all terrible, right? But we're built for that. I think we kind of, that's why our family dynamic at the station is so important. if it's a good family, right? But the uncertainty of, I always think that chiefs' jobs or supervisors' jobs are to make sure their subordinates have everything they need to function, right? That's our job. That's why they wash dishes and mop floors and all this, because I'm busy getting stuff for them, right? So if you aren't getting the resources or the support or the appropriate decision making, that's a lot of stress on, especially, I don't know, it's a lot of stress on everybody. But as a mid-level manager, like we are, it's worse because you don't know from day to day, what are we doing? Which way are we going? Are we gonna, I mean, and that is equally stressful because it leaves you in a kind of in a vacuum, right? We know how to save lives, but are we going to have enough stuff to do it? Are we going to have enough time or resources or who to call? And I see where you were going, Lisa, because we're psychically linked sometimes. I think in this
We are.
environment, it's almost a little bit worse, right? Well, maybe if we have time to talk about firefighter cancer stuff, I'll tell you how some of the stress is coming on with us too. So that's my 2 cents.
And I agree with you, Kim. It's like bad leadership, it can cause stress, it cause uncertainty, it can cause we don't know what we're doing from day to day. And it has an effect on your not only your mental health, but your physical health as well with bad leadership. I don't think some people realize how much bad leadership affects a person mentally and physically.
Lisa, one of the terms that is commonly used for this is psychological safety. And if you don't feel like you are safe at work and belong, then psychologically that can affect you pretty significantly. So, in whether it's your leadership or your peers, we're doing a high stress job. Even in slower departments and low frequency, it's still a high stress job. So having that support, that belonging, and that psychological safety from your peers and particularly from your leadership. And Chief Phillips, like you said, the support to get the rest of us to be able to do our jobs the best that we can. And without that, without feeling safe, it puts a lot of strain on people.
I think, Kat, I'm going to go back to a word she mentioned earlier is the culture. And so it doesn't matter, I guess, what leadership role, be it a small crew, module, or fire management officer, or in the wildland arena. The culture that leader promotes. And, we talk about safety culture a lot. And normally society or even in the wildland arenas, we think of physical safety, tree strike or burn over and that sort of thing. And it's up to the leader, I believe, to cultivate a culture of, a vulnerability in the fact that, yes, psychological safety, and promoting that and being vulnerable in the way they conduct business. Obviously, safety and physical safety of their folks. However, I think psychological safety is just as important. So yeah, the changing of the culture and making it okay. And we could all look back on our career paths and identify leaders that I remember having that gut punch, every time I pulled into the driveway of the station or whatever, and just like, oh, I'm gonna have to go to work, and it wasn't a safe environment versus those leaders that promoted not only psychological safety but physical safety, and you just wanted to be there. So leadership drives.
Okay. So when someone retires in the fire service, especially where I'm from, you turn in your equipment, you sign papers, maybe they have a retirement dinner for you, a luncheon, and you're out the door. We always say the fire service is like our second family. We spend 24 to 48 hours with our crews, including many holidays. Retirement can be especially hard if the member was not planning on retiring, but had to do so due to an injury. Do you feel that as we are failing our members by doing this? Should departments offer services to them to cope with the loss of a job?
Well, it's funny. I asked that question of a retired member after 50 years in the fire service. I knew this was coming up. Really, see, Lisa, I do homework. I do look ahead. What would he done? What would have been different, right? What could have been more helpful? And I think some of us are like, when we're ready to retire, I have a list of things to do, right? I'm not going to be lonely, bored, or unamused, right? Some people, that is their whole existence. And I was like, would something have helped to segue into that? And again, like Kimberly and Kat were saying, if the culture says, hey, man, you're out, have a wonderful time, you're retired, yay. But that's not what you want to be. I think that's really important. And you're right, especially after an injury, a career-ending injury. It wasn't what they had in mind. And we could even go further into the whole, now who helps them with the resources they need if they had a career-ending injury that we cause. What do we do? That's I think those soft response models we could develop. If we were to look for a direction to go in the future, that would be it, like a more global universal support system. Life changes are hard, right? So that's a big life change for a firefighter.
Heidi, did you have
Anyone else gonna retire? Heidi, you're retired, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky. We do have EAP benefits in retirement.
Oh, that's nice. Good.
Yeah, we don't have healthcare or anything, but we have EAP benefits for us and for our families. So I think that's a pretty big offering. I imagine it's something that they keep on because it's probably not used a lot, but they do encourage you to use it. And I had some people encourage me to go to counseling before I retired to discuss it, kind of like make a plan. And I thought that was great. We've tried to put together a group talking about retirement and making those, what's going to be your purpose, because I think that's what we're talking about, right? Regardless of whether I wanted to retire, I looked at retiring. I knew when I would retire. I also wanted to work in the office though, because I felt like I had more to give back, but there wasn't a position. So I was okay with it. But I felt like I don't really have a purpose, and I still have much to give, at least in my opinion. So, that trying to deal with that, whether you're ready to retire or not, is difficult. As Lisa mentioned, I worked in NCAA athletics for a number of years, and having an athlete that has a career-ending injury, very similar situation. The difference being that they're significantly younger, so their life experience is quite different. But that loss. So regardless of whether you wanted to retire or not, you have a loss. So you will go through that period of grief, and you don't have all of the normal things that you once had. And I think you'll hear people say, I don't miss the job, but I miss the kitchen table. And
fun, yeah.
that is, I think that's the number one thing, is you miss the kitchen table. Even if you are a rover and you work with a lot of different crews, it's just that camaraderie that you don't recreate with your neighbors, and that you don't recreate with other retirees, because you guys have your own lives. We have our own lives. We don't hang out as this retiree group. So I would encourage departments to look at offering mental health benefits following retirement. The EAP benefits can be pretty inexpensively, extended. And then also offering retirement groups. We have a luncheon once a quarter, I believe it is. Ours was today. I completely forgot about it. But when you do go, you run into people that have been retired for lots of years and just a few years. And it really does kind of make you feel like one of the gang again. So I encourage people to do some of those things, reach out to the retirees and keep them in contact. Keep them on email lists of what's going on in the department newsletters, things like that. I just think that eventually people may not want to be a part of that anymore. But I think, the first 5 years, especially, it just makes you feel a little more like you still belong.
So, I'd be remiss.
Ooh,
I
sorry, I had something to add on the wildland side, Lisa. So it's not so much about retirement, but for what many folks don't know is a huge portion of our workforce in the wildland fire, particularly on the federal side, are seasonal employees. And over the last recent years, with mental health becoming more and more on the forefront in conversations on the wildland fire front, this idea where we have folks going in and working high intensity jobs for 6 months out of the year, and then we fire them. We put them in non-pay status. We don't talk to them until the next summer. And this high intensity, lots of support, because in wildland, I see these people 24 hours a day, almost all summer. I live with them in the bunkhouse. I travel with them to fires, states and thousands of miles away. Then I'm working on the fire line with them for 16 hours. And then when that's done, I'm eating chow with them. I'm sleeping with them. I'm standing in line at the shower with them. And then all of a sudden, all that support is gone. And one of the things we have done in recognizing that in the wildland fire side is we've generated we have a preparedness guide, how to introduce not just the firefighters, but their families into what this lifestyle looks like. But then we also have what we call the reset guide that we provide that helps folks get off-boarded and how do they move into that off-season or that non-pay status. And it's one of the things that's starting to grow traction and helping people start the conversations. Like it's been mentioned earlier, part of the problem is that we just don't talk about it. And so that's one of the tools on the wildland fire community that's been developed more recently to help with it.
Thanks for adding that, Megan. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that another member has joined us. Recently retired professional basketball player Christy Belloc. Christy, thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedule to join us. What we were talking about, you might have caught it. We're talking about that when people retire in the fire service, you just kind of send them out the door and there's a separation period. So like when you play professional sports and people, their professional career is over, is there services that are offered to professional athletes, or is it kind of the same thing that we do in the fire services, like see you, bye?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I apologize to everyone for being late. I got the times mixed up, but I'm here. And
Do that.
so for women's professional basketball, it's a little different. It's a little behind the curve, in my opinion, of helping women transition to the next phase of life after basketball. I was lucky enough to link up with Elena Beard. She is an ex-WNBA player herself. She started a company called Transition Play, and her whole niche is to help women specifically in any sport transition from that sport to the next phase of life. Because I can tell you right now, that is the biggest worry of all female athletes, because we talk about it while I was playing my 10 years overseas. And we talk about like, okay, what do you want to do when you're done playing? And all of our answers are very similar. We're like, I really don't know what I'm truly interested in. That gives me the same kind of feeling as playing basketball at a really high level. So I was very thankful to meet Elena and have her facilitate or help me navigate what I want to do, to where I was proud to say, okay, this is my job now that I'm done playing on a professional level. This is what I'm doing now. For when people ask me, hey, Christy, what are you doing? I could probably say I'm an athletic director in California at the best bay club in the world. So it was very satisfying for me to know that there is something after what your dream goal was. And it was very satisfying to know that it is obtainable, even with no like work history, because basketball is all you know. So to be here, to be in this position, I highly think that more companies should advocate towards helping athletes specifically to know what they want to do next and help them get there, because we have great mindsets, we have great work ethic, we have great time management, but the only thing we're lacking is work experience. So I think it's behind the curve, but I think we're also getting there.
And I gotta admit, she's come to the best club in the Bay Area, and she's implemented so many different programs there. It's utterly amazing what she's done there. So how do we prioritize one's mental health?
Talking to me, Lisa.
You want to go ahead, Christy?
Come on, Christy, you're on a roll. Go, go.
She's a superstar.
How do we prioritize mental health? One of the main things I've learned to understand is I need to have something outside of basketball that I am very passionate about to help me manage my mental health. Because if it's just all basketball, I'm going to drive myself crazy. Because there's always ups and downs. You're always going to win games, lose games, foul out, miss every shot. The coach is going to yell at you. So if you don't have an outlet to be able to do something on your off time, then that's where the unbalance comes in. So for me to prioritize mental health, it was always I love being outside. So I would go outside to the beach wherever I was overseas, go outside to see some scenery, go to a coffee shop, bring a book with me, just find a way to escape and find a different release form other than my day-to-day everyday task. That's the only way I help preserve my mental health in my playing years. So yeah.
So in the fire service, how can we like make sure that we always say like we do an assessment center, or we do and when you're sitting down as a chief, you're talking to your crew, and we always say, oh yeah, I'm going to watch my crew and see if there's any changes in their behavior. That's always an answer. Kim, you've done a lot of assessment centers. Heidi, you have. And somehow people always screw that out. Well, I'm going to watch my crew and make sure that their mental health, what are we watching? What are we watching for? I mean, changes in their behavior, but I mean, so if we see changes in behavior, I mean, we refer them to social, I mean, EAP or the chaplain or something. But like Chrissy just said, I mean, should we be encouraging people to have like outside hobbies and such?
Stress for different people is different, right? Like Christy likes to go out. Me too. I like to be outside or doing something non-fire related, right? If it catches on fire, I'm going to run and scream like everybody else. Oh God, somebody do something. But when you say, and we do this all the time, you know, watch your crews, watch your crews, watch your crews, look for something different. My experience with that, and I've had a couple, by the time that happens, it's way too late. It's way too late.
Yes,
And then you're referring them to the staff psychologist or up for discipline, and that doesn't fix anything. I think, I don't know, everyone is different, and I think it's just important to make sure your crews with people, your family, your friends, everybody knows that. It's like, hey, nothing here is sacred. You can tell me anything, okay? And encourage that amongst your crews, but that's really hard, right? Because we're high pressure, we're always on the move, we're going. But I think just being an open presence is a better way than just going, you seem nicer than normal. Are you okay? Are you fixing to hurt yourself? You know, I don't know how far that gets us. So
it's too late at that point, like you said. And I think that's part of like mental health is we need to make sure that people understand what is mental health, what we're looking for in mental health, and do something before it gets to the point where we're like saying, go talk to the psychiatrist, go talk to the EAP person or whatnot, because by then we're already way behind the curveball. So I think that May is Mental Health Month, getting it out there. I mean, heard on the radio a few times this month now that it is Mental Health Month. So I think they are trying. I think in the last couple of years, COVID helping, there's been some sports events that we've seen some issues with mental health issues that especially the NFL jumped right on one of them, realizing the impact that could have on people. So I think we're getting better as a society, but we still have such a long way to go, I believe. Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
I think this is one of the places where I struggle with the most. Everybody wants to do good. We have good intent. We want to help people. We don't want to see people fail. But I'm not a mental health professional. So we talk about this. What do we look for? What do we do? When it comes down to it, I'm a wildland firefighter. I do damn good at digging line and mopping up. You know what I am not really good at? Probably people skills. There's a reason I go out in the woods to work, right? And so I see it happening at work. We have all this focus on mental health and providing good mental health that I see people taking uninformed actions with good intent in regards to thinking they're going to help somebody. And the problem is when we take the wrong actions or we do something that isn't helpful, even though we think it is, we do more damage. Like I have seen supervisors, those bad leaders we talked about, thinking that they're going to help an employee who is struggling and overstressed by removing them from their position and putting them somewhere else. And what they did is they actually hurt the environment more because they didn't have a conversation. They took control and autonomy away from the person who was struggling, and it just made it worse. And you know why? They did that because they thought they were helping. They thought they were doing good. They thought they were helping relieve the stress and take off that pressure. But they're not health professionals, and they're taking actions without any advice or reference,
Megan,
just this idea we should be taking.
Megan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I don't think that's what anybody meant. I think that we watch somebody's behavior on a 24/48 time in the structural fire service, and we could see where somebody has changed or they're more depressed or something. We're not going to send them home. I don't think anyone on this panel has the authority to send somebody home. And even if you did, you're not just going to send somebody home that you think is having depression or anxiety or something. You're going to get them the mental health services they need, which means send them to the staff psychiatrist if your department has one, or send them offer them EAP and then follow up on them. We're not just going to, I don't think anyone meant that we're just going to send somebody home when we feel that they're having a mental health crisis. And I know I wouldn't, I could attest to Kim because she keeps saying we have the same thought process. And I know Heidi and I have had numerous conversations about mental health issues. So I think that
And I'm not meaning to point fingers and
no, I
people
understand.
are.
So
it's a struggle because we're not mental health professionals to start making those assessments of others.
Lisa, I think that there's, we're not making, I think that the difference would be that we're not making mental health assessments. We're recognizing that our people are struggling. And so we don't always have the resources, the capabilities, the abilities to help people. And that's totally okay. But we have the responsibility as supervisors and more importantly, as leaders, to make sure that people are being taken care of and are taking care of themselves. So I think it goes back to what both Kat and Megan said earlier about culture. And we have to start, grassroots, and we have to start building cultures that mental health as all of our responsibilities, and starting to develop resilience within each other and within ourselves. And you can see when people are struggling with negative self-talk or lack of confidence in their skills. And there are little things that you can do just as a leader to help build people up without actually addressing the true mental health parts of it. But if you're in any organization that doesn't have a human resources or EAP situation that you can refer to, then look outside at some of your resources that are online, just so that you have some referrals. Because ignoring it, and I'm not making any intentions that people would ignore it, but not dealing with it because you are afraid that you don't know what to do correctly, that you might make a mistake. That isn't our job. Our job as leaders is to address the situation. And it may be as simply as just, hey, I'm here for you. And here are some resources for you. And I'll go with you. Whatever you need, I'm here. I don't know how to deal with this either. But I see that you're struggling and I care about you. And I think that goes back to that whole situation of psychological safety is, do we care about our people? Because if we care about our people, they'll feel safe, and then they will allow us to help them with their problems. So I think that, we can make mistakes. And I think the biggest thing is to rely on some of your resources before you actually jump into action and really just show that you care.
And piggybacking on, I think it's mental health awareness should start when they're in recruit school, that there's resources available, that we notice that instead of after the fact. I mean, maybe it is happening now. I know the first time I ever had employee assistant ever was when the 4 Oakland police officers got shot on a call and all of them were dead. But I think it's too late. Yeah, it's we have to get ahead of it before we get behind it. And if we have young men and women in recruit school or fire academy, and they're not aware that there's mental health services available for them, they're probably not going to want to ask for help because there's that stigma. I think either Heidi or Kim said it earlier. There's a stigma in the fire service that there's no crying in the fire service, just like the stigma there's no crying in sports. We're supposed to be like the Superman, Superwoman, and be able to solve everybody's problem, and that's really not the case. I mean, we have feelings, we have emotional health needs as well as anybody else. So I think we've kind of hit on this, but how can we help everyone understand mental health care? Are we focused too much on the wrong things when it comes to mental health? And do we wait too long to offer services for those in need? And that's not like just even in the fire service, that's just like the general public. I mean, don't they say like over 50% of homeless people have mental health issues? So if they had gotten maybe some mental health care before they became homeless. So do we wait too long as a society, not even as a fire service, as a society, to offer mental health to people?
I think the homeless rate is actually even higher than that. I think it's close to 75% that have mental health issues. I think helping people understand can be sharing stories. Just, I think people are our biggest asset when it comes to this, making connections with people and sharing stories that people can relate to. It is nice when you hear a story that someone else is telling you and your thought is, oh, I'm not the only one. Oh, it's not just me that feels like that. Like, that's a great feeling in itself. But I think sharing experiences and letting people know, like, hey, I've gone through hard times and I made it through, and you may be going through something hard right now, but you're going to make it. Just hang in there. Helps so much, and it helps bring that topic up, because once people realize they're not alone in something, people naturally want to be a part of something. So they start to group together, and then they start to share their stories because they see the same reaction in other people that they felt towards the person who told them that. I don't think that we're necessarily focused on the wrong thing. I think, honestly, anything in mental health, anything that we could be working on helps. I think we're making great progress. I don't think we'll ever be done. People still have mental health issues. Firefighters are still committing suicide. So we have to keep fighting this fight, because not winning is not an option anymore. I think as far as waiting too long, if we're waiting to offer services, then that is too long. If there's any hesitation to offer services, like you said, Lisa, this should be introduced in Fire Academy. This should be introduced the day they come into the fire service, the day they start their first day. It should be part of their orientation. Like, hey, just so you know, like, you're going to see things, you're going to hear things, you're going to feel things. Fire Academy is going to be tough. Your career is going to be tough, but here's resources, let's have these conversations, and here's how to deal with it. Because I see, even in the academies that I help teach, we talk about these things in the beginning of the academy, and they think that's what the fire service is going to be like. So throughout academy, they have no problem talking about this stuff, because we put it in their heads at the beginning. Hey, you need to talk about this stuff, and we normalize it. So they go out in the fire service, they're having these conversations and bringing them up in the departments that they go to, and people are forced to answer their questions and listen to this, and it slowly becomes more and more normal to start to talk about these things.
And I think some fire departments are actually trying to get ahead of that. Instead of sending engines and trucks and paramedics to certain calls, they send what I think they call mobile integrated health services. I think Alameda City, I think, was one of the first ones that started that, where they have an EMT and a paramedic on basically an SUV, and they respond to calls where it might be a mental health care issue. I think it was really integrated. Oakland started it. It was to take away a lot of the non-911 issue calls from the police and the fire, but the success rate is pretty high when they go on the calls and realize the person just really needs mental health care services. So they're able to provide the person the mental health services, as opposed if an ambulance just showed up and the person's complaining of some kind of pain and they just transport them to the hospital. And then probably 3 weeks later, going to be back to the same call. So I think certain departments have, and it's becoming more and more prevalent around the whole United States, that these units are being put into service. So I think that's helping a lot with mental health to get this out there. So back in 2023, millions watched the January 2nd NFL game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills, where an unprecedented tragedy happened. Bills safety Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field. The incident was devastating. The NFL had no playbook for managing the real-time event and the emotions associated with the immediate life-threatening event. They suspended the game. Like the fire service, many pro athletes have a tendency to compartmentalize their feelings. We have heard the saying, no crying in sports, no crying in the fire department. How can we as leaders ensure that we get the message across to those we supervise or work with that it's okay to show your emotions? It's okay to talk about how you feel. It's okay to open up.
That's a good one. So, look, I definitely like this one. So I saw that play. I saw that moment happen, and it hit home for me, especially because I have heart problems. So to see that, to see multiple basketball players just drop on the basketball court, it really it bothers me because I could be like, that could happen to me one day. That was always on the back of my mind, that it can happen to anyone. And for me to have heart problems, it was very important for me to get a better understanding of, number one, do the people around me know how to do CPR? Do the people around me understand how to act uh, in a moment's notice in a situation that I need help? So to go from that and to now fast forward to getting my basketball trainer for an example. He came to me one day and was like, "Hey, Chrissy, I'm not really feeling well. I'm not in the best mental space. Can I take the day off?" And I didn't even hesitate to respond, "Absolutely. Do you want me to call? Do you want to talk about it? Is there anything you need?" He was like, I just need to take the week off." And it was nothing for me to take his place, to jump in and complete all the things I have him doing. And it just really hones into understanding that people need to have an open door policy for people to come and tell you, "Hey, I'm not having a really good day. I'm not feeling the best. I need to take a mental health day. I need to, get myself back together before I come to my place of work." So I 100% agree that it should be an open door policy for people to express how they're feeling, to express when they're going through stuff, and for the person they're telling to be receptive of that.
I love the the parallel between the NFL. I too was watching this game. I remember my heart literally stopping just by, the shock of the moment, and then just the camaraderie and the love that poured out across the nation for this individual. I I see that perhaps the NFL may have had a playbook. Maybe behind closed doors, they did have a playbook on how they address the reactions, obviously, to a nation that was watching with holding their breath. They probably couldn't, immediately play that out. But I have to like go back into my wildland fire realm and just think about in the past when we've had line of duty deaths that just shock the heart and everyone stops and takes a knee. And, moving forward from that, of course, we have the systems in place, the immediate, taking care of the families and the loved ones and the crew members and such. But I often think our playbook also incorporates um, not just the near-term reaction playbook, but the long-term, and how in the past we've, 30 days out after a line of duty, we actually go back and, if it's a out of region area, as a critical incident stress, we go back and we do check-ins with leadership, with the crew members, and, just 30 days out or 60 days out, it's just intentional and to check in on everyone and that buddy system as well, just incorporating just those check-ins. That's a leadership call, obviously, but it's definitely beneficial.
So Megan, you hit on it a little bit earlier about you don't see them for 6 months when you're on they're off, they don't work for 6 months and such. Do you guys check in on them, or is there a process where you check in on the individuals that haven't worked for 6 months to see how they're doing? Do they have other jobs, or?
It varies widely. A lot of things that come into this realm of mental health and well-being really depends for us on people just being good people, right? Because a lot of in wildland particularly, a lot of our leadership on the ground level is very young comparatively to what you may experience in structure. My first engine captain was 26 years old, and he was taking five of us out onto large wildland fires in the middle of nowhere. When I hit 26-year-old, I was nowhere near mature or responsible enough to be doing that kind of stuff. But these are the people who are the immediate contacts for these folks that we're talking about in wildland, our seasonal and our permanent seasonal workforces. And so I look back at 26 years old, shit, at 30 years old, 35 years old, I don't think I had that emotional intelligence or capability to think about that, because I have my own shit going on, right? I have my own stressors. I'm trying to keep my own, train on the tracks. Do I have the capacity to reach out and see if somebody else is also staying on track? And a lot of times I don't. And that's hit and miss. Like I said, a lot of it depends on our people. Good people, do they have the capacity? We don't have any sort of guidance or any sort of SOP that tells us what to do in that realm.
I think too, just to add on that, if I may, we talked about the apprenticeship academy or the academy in which, we're training these entry level firefighters. I mean, if we plant the seed early on that mental health is important, having a buddy, check, knowing, I always call it prehab instead of rehab, but prepare these people for those times, be it, they know there's going to be a transition when they're going to leave the crew, and instill upon them that, hey, it's okay to have a buddy check throughout the winter months, that again is leadership, as Megan mentioned.
So professional athletes face unique challenges that can impact their mental health. Chris, you hit on it a little bit. They experience intense pressure, scrutiny, and competition, which can lead to stress, anxiety, and depression. The same occurs in the fire service. But how does a professional athlete affect your mental health? Like you're always like supposed to perform like.
It's extremely hard to have the understanding of I'm going overseas or I'm going in the WBA. My whole goal is to score. My whole goal is to win. My whole goal is to win championships, and to have this constantly on your mind is a big struggle. It's a big struggle for a lot of women, because when you lose, it's all on you. It's all on you. You did what didn't you do right in order for the team to win? And when you win, the coach gets the glory. So it's a big back and forth of an understanding of, okay, how do I manage my mental health? How do I not get so high and not get so low, to where I understand I'm over here to do a job. I'm over here to play the game that I love, and I also want to win. But you have to be realistic. You're not going to win every game. So you just have to battle those demons inside of you, to where they don't overcome, to where it's like have something outside, like I said before, to help with your mental, to understand like, hey, this is a roller coaster of a game. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs. How do you manage it throughout the season? How do you manage it for years to continue to do the thing that you love? How do you manage it to continue to travel the world? So it's a huge struggle within athletes because it's a lot of pressure from coaches, from families, from your teammates, from yourself. Pressure is can be weighing on your chest, on your back, on your heart. So it's a lot of mental juggling, and it can be very hard. But if you have the right tools, if you have the right self-talk, that can propel you to get to the place where you want to be.
So in the fire service, we experience intense pressure, scrutiny, and competition. Not competition, but scrutiny and such. We go on a fall. I mean, I don't know. There's a saying: telegraph, telephone, tell a firefighter. Something could happen 20 miles, well, Kim, 50 miles from one of the stations in Houston. And everybody hears about it. So how, as like firefighters, how do we help people understand that? I mean, I know people used to get like hyped up about a fire and stuff. And I remember one time I told this kid, I said, we didn't start the fire. We're there to put it out. So, I mean, I had a chief that used to scream. And I was like, look at her like, does she think screaming is going to make the fire go out? It's not. So how could we I mean, how as firefighters can we help people understand that the stress, anxiety, and depression, unfortunately, I think we all know, I would take away depression, let's say stress and anxiety for the moment, is something that we're going to face almost on a daily basis. When the alarm goes off at 2 in the morning and it makes all the noise and you hear for the structure fire, your heart starts to race. So how can we make people understand that, we didn't cause the emergency. We're there to mitigate the emergency so that they don't get upset if it doesn't go exactly how in their minds they thought it should go. Because as we know, every incident's not going to go as we planned for it to go, unfortunately.
I hope I'm all lost here at the thing. Hey, I know we try, I guess the word I'm looking for is resiliency, right? Not everything is a mental health crisis, right? Yeah, it's sad or it's disappointing or irritating is all, yeah, but it's not always a crisis. Sometimes you have to tell people, look, I'm not excusing any bad behavior, but this is sometimes the way it is, right? And, build the strength up in them, right? You have the backbone and the fortitude to go forward and go, I'll just, pour salt in that guy's Cheerios next time. It'll make me all feel better, right? When I used to coach cross country in high school, I didn't play basketball. I'm 5'2", right? Christy, I envy you desperately. I've never been able to reach a bowl in the fire station. I used to tell the girls that I coached, hey, there's a giant difference between pain and discomfort, right? Discomfort is I have period cramps. I have my eyeball itches, pain is I broke an arm, right? And I think sometimes in the fire service, we tell people that too. It's like, hey, you got to know the difference between, is this painful or is this just discomfort? I don't appreciate, can you let it go and then move on with your day and be cool about it? And we try and get the little girls we try and get the young ladies who are coming into the fire service now, us old girls, I can say old because I'm old. And we try and get a hold of them early on and go, listen, this is a whole new world. This is a whole new family. It's not like your family, right? And you need to build a little bit of resilience. We're not excusing bad behavior, but we're also saying, hey, it's okay to feel sad, but sometimes you got to pick yourself up and move on down the road, right? That's discomfort. It's not pain. Pain would be sexual harassment, denied opportunities to succeed. Discomfort is the whole, they started dinner without me, okay. I does that make sense to everyone? It seems to me. It's managing expectations, maybe.
It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of it, and this is going to sound so cliche, but examples. If we're not going to overtly and outrightly directly teach people how to do things, they're going to learn by seeing. They're going to learn by how they're seeing other people react, how they see other people responding in these situations. So like when you said you saw someone on fire and they're screaming and yelling and you're like, that doesn't put the fire out, right? But if people are looking at that leader yelling and screaming, they're learning that behavior is appropriate and acceptable, right? And that's why you see, at least in wildland, it's okay for us to express anger and frustration, but it's not okay for us to express vulnerability or sadness. And that's because what do we see? We see other people expressing anger and frustration. What happens when we see somebody show another emotion? I know what I do, and it's not the best. I'm like, oh God, there's tears. I don't know what to do with tears. Right. And if I show that that is how I'm reacting, what's it going to make that person who's showing tears feel?
Yeah.
And then I'm also demonstrating the reaction for other people to also be like, tears, step away, back off. This not good, not good.
And Megan, I'm glad you said that because that's kind of the stigma, like there's no crying in sports. There's no cry. I mean, we know in the fire service, I mean, especially being females in the fire service, how many times like you've told like don't cry, don't show your emotions is what I always heard. Don't show your emotions, don't let them see your emotions, just keep it to yourself
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I remember going back to sports for a minute last year. Oh, Kim, I was gonna say you're Houston Texans, but I forgot you don't like football. Last year, Tank Dell tore, I think, every ligament and broke his kneecap in a game. And CJ, everybody, you witnessed it on TV, right? But no one knew the how bad it was. And CJ Stroud was crying. And he took such a beating for showing his emotions of crying. I mean, and he said numerous times that is his best friend. And I think he, in his mind, he kind of thought it was his fault too because he threw him the ball. But it was like that just showed how much further we have to come as a society, as there's no crying in sports. There's no, I mean, we should have been glad that he was showing his emotions. The guy was, I mean, severely hurt, and he's showing his emotions to his team player, his teammate. And so I think, as we've been talking about mental health and such, but I think we still have so far to go to get people to understand, especially that it's okay to show your emotions, especially in the fire service. I don't know, Kim, Megan, Kat, Kimberly, have you guys were ever told, don't show your emotions, don't let them see you cry?
Oh,
Yes. And
Yes.
I'll give you a quick example. I showed my emotions back in 1994 as a surviving coworker on South Canyon Fire on Storm King, and we lost four of my sisters in that fire as well. And as the only female survivor on my crew, I cried. I cried. And what did they didn't know what to do with an individual crying because back in 30 plus years ago, it was like, you don't show emotions. And they ended up putting me in isolation up in a lookout tower, roadless area for 2 months. So I could cry. And it was like, and there was probably other reasons they did that, but that's the lesson moving forward. We do not it's easy to isolate, right? Because we don't know, like Megan said, what do you do when somebody's crying? But you don't have to do anything. Maybe just being with them, maybe just being quiet, putting a hand on their shoulder, just being with them with no judgment is exactly what we need to be doing.
Thanks for sharing that, Kimberly.
that is so true, Kim. I had a conversation with Kim not that long ago, and my being at work, finding out my brother was passing away, somebody did exactly what Kim did. I isolated myself because I was teary-eyed and sad, and I didn't want to make people feel uncomfortable. And the one thing that helped me is one crew member of mine came to check on me, and they sat with me. They didn't say anything. They didn't go, oh, it's going to be okay. He's going to a better place. They didn't say any shit like that. They sat there with me and they held my hand. I don't know if it was 5 minutes, 2 hours, but for that time period, that weight was shared. And it wasn't just on me. So that hit my heartstrings, Kim.
So we're almost about out of time. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add pertaining to mental health? Or Heidi, you look like you want to say something. No?
I'll add just one more thing. I'll say I think one of our biggest weaknesses as helpers is that we're so set on helping other people that we forget to help ourselves. And we need to remember the oxygen mask theory, that you have to put your oxygen mask on before we help others, because I know everybody wants to help, but you can't help others if you don't help yourself. So for everybody on the podcast and everybody else listening, make sure that you guys are practicing self-care so that you're in a good position to help other people.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So thanks you to each guest for being a part of the radio show. Thank you to Fire Engineering again for allowing us to be part of your radio show podcasts. Thanks to all the listeners and members of Women in Fire. Remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and to check out our website of womeninfire.org, and to join us at our international conference next September in Austin.
This podcast is brought to you by Firehouse Subs, the firefighter-founded hot sub chain with a passion for hearty and flavorful food, heartfelt service, and public safety. Ready for your next mission? Firehouse Subs is offering firefighters the opportunity to continue serving after service, now as restaurant owners. Learn more at Firehouse Subs